For now, let's just hit Senate Bill 103 and get this thing mercifully off the desk. With that, I'd like to welcome everyone to the House Economic Matters Committee. Today is Monday, April 5th, 1 week to go. Yay. Voting list number 23. I am excited to be here with you all. We're gonna get this week done. You guys have been amazing, and we're gonna finish strong. So with that, Madam Vice Chair, am I kicking it to you or am I sending it to council? How are we proceeding on this?
Either. You might want to send it to council because there's an amendment from the sponsor as well. I mean, I'm
okay. Is that you, Laura?
But yeah, the amendment from the sponsor might be best by council.
All righty.
So Senate Bill 103 is Senator Kramer's bill about the regulation of retail pet stores and the sale of dogs and cats in the state. As introduced, the bill alters the definition of retail pet store. That's important because what's considered a retail pet store is prohibited from selling dogs and cats in the state as of January 1st of last year. So the bill as introduced would have altered that definition to include brokers, and then it would have excluded, it would have taken out the sort of specification that the store be open to the public, and then it would have excluded from the definition an establishment at which the animals are being sold were born, and places where a completed sale, transfer, or disposition of a cat or dog is conducted in person with both parties physically present at the same location. So the sponsor has offered an amendment to take out that very last part that I just mentioned, the part that would have exempted or taken out of the definition, basically in-person sales. And then we have a new set of amendments from the vice chair. We distributed the reprint, and I can pull that up on the screen if it's helpful for the committee, but would you like me to do that, Mr. Chair? Or would you like me to just kind of discuss it?
Would you please, I want everybody to be as quick as they can.
Okay. Okay. So the vice chair's amendment, it makes a number of definitional changes, which are important for how sort of the whole law is interpreted. It takes out the definition of broker and instead defines a dealer as including a broker or anyone who's licensed as a dealer under the Federal Animal Welfare Act, whose business includes the purchase, sale, and transfer of dogs or cats. The vice chair's amendment removes broker from being sort of captured under the definition of retail pet store, and then makes the same change that Senator Kramer is proposing to make, where you're taking out the exemption from what's not considered a retail pet store for the in-person sales. And then she is proposing to set out a number of sort of consumer protection disclosures for dealers. So a dealer that sells cats or dogs would be required to provide the following information for each dog or cat sold. And so you can see there are 7 items here. So the breed, age, and date of birth of the dog or cat, if known, the state in which the breeder or dealer of the dog is located, the USDA license number of the breeder or dealer, if applicable, a health certificate from a vet licensed in the state where the dog or cat is located within 10 days before the sale, the date of sale, certifying that the dog or cat essentially is healthy, doesn't appear to have any illnesses, a statement notifying the purchaser of specific rights, a statement certifying that the dog or cat was not obtained from a substandard source of dogs or cats that prioritizes profit over the welfare of the dog or cat. And then a statement that cats or dogs handled by the dealer have been held in a facility that is in full compliance with all applicable provisions of the Federal Animal Welfare Act. And then the last provision of the Vice Chair's amendment would establish a task force to study canine breeding facilities and sourcing standards. And so there would be 2 legislative members, the Secretary of Agriculture or the Secretary's designee, the Attorney General or the Attorney General's designee, and then a number of organizational representatives, as well as an owner of a small retail pet store, and an attorney with a practice concentration in animal welfare law. And the report would be due to ECM, Finance, and the governor by December 1st of this year. And essentially, you can see the charge here. The task force is required to look to study at canine breeding facilities, including online sales of canines through breeding facilities, and then has to review and sort of look at a number of different standards, which I'm sure the vice chair can elaborate on some of that. But that's it.
So I would say I have no objections to Senator Kramer's amendment, would actually propose that we adopt that. So I would move to adopt Senator Kramer's amendment.
Here a second.
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 All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Are there any additional
Okay.
amendments?
Well, in explaining the amendments, if I can, first, I was careful not, other than taking brokers out of the definition of a retail pet store, I did not make any changes to the bill regarding a definition of the pet store. From my judiciary days, if something's in litigation, I didn't normally try and, we waited till the litigation's done. And although at the initial, the District Court of Maryland has denied the request for an injunction and dismissed the complaint. Apparently it's on appeal. And so I'm not trying to touch the 2018 description of pet stores, and that pet stores are not allowed to sell dogs or cats unless they've worked out something with a animal shelter or animal rescue. Those dogs can be sold through a pet store. So what I have been looking at over the last 4 or 5 days was the Animal Welfare Act, which is a US statute that is very broad and has significant regulations attached to it. I'll also tell you that I had a very long conversation with Senator Kramer yesterday. He doesn't like my amendment, so that if I'll make sure you know he doesn't like my amendments. The history that he gave me is the fact that, yes, the Welfare Act is very extensive and very specific about what can or can't be sold, but that there is no enforcement capability. That, there are 9,000 or more pet stores and breeders and whatever across the country, but that there's only 111 investigators at the federal level. So that, these things just aren't enforced. So his perspective, as he did in 2018, and he says that in the past, he's asked the pet stores to sort of, follow these guidelines. They weren't doing it. So that's where he came in with the ban. I'm uncomfortable with just sort of making broad-based, I don't know that every broker or breeder is a puppy mill. And I don't necessarily know how to, and neither does Senator Kramer, he admits, decide what is or isn't. So my first one actually is to sort of say a dealer has to be licensed under the Animal Welfare Act. Now, Senator Kramer would certainly tell you that that makes no difference because there's no enforcement. So nobody follows what they're supposed to do, whether they're licensed or not. That's his position. I think we heard differently from some of the people that testified in opposition to the bill. But the other piece that I do think is important is the task force. If we are truly going to try and regulate breeders, dealers, brokers, whomever you want to call it, then we should have a strong statutory scheme. And I don't think it's something we can do on the fly. So the task force that you'll see, I tried very hard to balance it and include all of the individuals that testified for it, as well as those that representatives of people that testified against it, animal welfare advocates. I included the Attorney General because what Senator Kramer told me is that the Attorney General was tired of receiving complaints and that he or she can't enforce them. Therefore, just ban everything. And I've talked to an awful lot of people that, you know, feel like some of these brokers they've had good experiences with, and I just am uncomfortable completely banning. So it's really two amendments. One is to define dealer and broker. And then the second is to provide, which I took the language pretty much straight out of the Animal Welfare Act. So Amendment 1 defines dealer broker. Amendment 2 then indicates that if you're going to buy from a dealer or a broker, that the dealer or broker has to provide you that documentation when you purchase. So maybe, Mr. Chair, it makes sense to try and take the two amendments separately. And if we want to talk about my amendment number 1, so to speak, and then we can go to the task force next.
Let me go to Delegate Pippi and then Delegate Aarons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a lot of moving parts here, so I don't know where to begin. Did we talk about what is the reason for the bill?
I'm sorry?
What is the reason for the bill?
I'm not sure I can explain that, other than I think he's trying to tighten the definition of pet store, because we heard the testimony of the one pet store that said he felt that the language as passed in 2018 allowed them to still showcase dogs and sell them from breeders. And what his bill is trying to do is say pet stores cannot sell dogs or cats unless it is through an animal rescue or animal shelter.
So,
The only thing I was going to add.
Laura can explain better, but
The only thing I was going to add, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Delegate. Go ahead.
So my wife and I bought a dog from an Amish, well, we think it's an Amish farm in Pennsylvania. It could be, I don't know, I guess a broker under this language, but we tried for years to work with a rescue groups to get German short-haired pointers, which is the type of dogs that we've always had in our family. And they're just a nightmare to deal with. I mean, and we found an Amish farm in Pennsylvania that had litter, and it was expensive, but we got a dog, and luckily he's worked out for 7 years. So I look at the language of the bill, and I'm just really confused. I mean, because I look at some of the testimony, I know there's a lot of amendments working here. I know there's a potential study coming, and I'm hesitant to vote on anything until I understand exactly what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, are they trying to say that you can't get any dog unless it's from either a rescue or I'm
shelter.
confused, at this whole thing, because it's difficult to get certain dogs. I mean, in working with rescue people, they can deny you. I mean, they can just say, we don't want to give you a dog. You're not big enough, I mean, we interviewed you and you didn't make the cut. So, I mean, is that where we're headed here? I mean, are there like stories of abuse that we're trying to cut down on?
Per Senator Kramer, he believes that any broker or dealer, such as Puppy Spot, who testified before us, are getting their animals from puppy mills. So the purpose of the bill is to make sure that animals are not purchased from puppy mills, which technically is what the Animal Welfare Act at the US level was also designed to do. But again, as Senator Kramer has indicated, it's really a question of enforcement. You can buy from a breeder as an individual. You can contact a breeder directly. Nothing in this bill prohibits that. Senator Kramer's bill, as introduced, because again, he included broker in the definition of a retail pet store, which would mean you could not go to a broker online or otherwise. You could, however, continue to go directly to a breeder as you did.
So they want to cut out the wholesaler? I mean,
The intermediary.
Intermediaries, that's the better word, yes.
The only thing that I was just going to add sort of for the committee's benefit is just a little bit of context, because some of you who've been on the committee for longer may remember it's been many years in the making to get to this point. So in 2012, Delegate Kipke introduced legislation to set a number of purchaser remedies, for lack of a better term. So kind of like a lemon law, so that if you purchased a dog that had congenital health issues, you were entitled to certain remedies. And then in 2016 and 2017, then Delegate Kramer put in legislation regarding sourcing. So his concern was he wanted to sort of make consumers more aware of the source of the animal. And the thought was at the time, if a consumer knows it came from this breeder or that breeder or has more information, then it's less likely to have come from a puppy mill. So then in 2018, there was a substantial piece of legislation that banned, effective January 1, 2020, banned retail pet stores from selling dogs and cats. And then it also repealed a number of those consumer remedy protections because those stores are no longer allowed to sell. So last year, the committee actually passed this bill and it died on the House floor. But it's been, it started out sort of as purchaser remedies.
Hold on, Laura. It
Yeah.
didn't die. It ran out of time. It didn't die.
Ran out of time, correct.
That's what I said. It died on the House floor. It ran out of time.
Die in the same sentence.
No, die is when it doesn't get enough votes.
Okay, it ran out of time on the House floor on sine die.
There you go.
And because the retail stores are not actually breeding the dogs, they were considered an intermediary, I'm assuming, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right, I'm caught up. Thank you.
Me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Delegate Aaron.
Okay, it's kind of how I feel about some bills here. I just ran out of time arguing a couple. Is that what you're saying? Now, on the bill, I guess a couple concerns I have is that when this study the amendment you have, Madam Vice Chair, I listened to the testimony. We had a spot puppy or whatever it was.
Right, puppy spot.
One was still in litigation. The other was sitting back saying that we've never really spoken. We've never done anything wrong. We're a good group. I like the idea about doing a study because, I like dogs better than I do people. So I'm very concerned about them. But I also sit back and say that, we're dealing with bad actors in every area. And you mentioned the fact that enforcement is the issue here. So even if we put this bill into effect today, enforcement is going to be the issue tomorrow. And I didn't know if the other parts of the amendment that you put in there about what I have to do to buy a dog, because I'm looking at a dog now. I don't know who that shuts out and if both parties or all parties were okay with something like that. Is that still going to give the normal?
You don't have to do anything, but if you purchase from a dealer or broker that is licensed by the Animal Welfare Act, that broker would have to provide you the information that's listed in the amendment.
Okay, are those brokers okay with that?
Yes.
I'm just going to do it. So
I'm not helping the pet stores in any of my amendments because I do think that is what, and that's the other group that you were talking about that said we're really not doing anything wrong.
Okay.
That is what is subject to litigation to be interpreted.
Okay.
And I'm leaving that alone.
Okay. I do think that between Senator Kramer and the one guy, they said, we've never spoken. And that seemed to be where there was a lot of comments about them. And I like the idea of a work group, but I certainly don't want to put something out there that's going to further give us our tremendous ability to not have an ability to enforce and take care of the dog. And
I appreciate that. And again, I put these things out more for conversation and discussion because I'm just a little bothered by sort of the way our law is working now. And I'm trying to find, like I said, I think that the work is something that would be important. One of the advocates, I think the woman that was here for bailing out Benji, actually, talked about how other states have laws that are stronger than ours. Now, in fairness, she sent me a chart that was done by the University of Michigan, and there are 19 to 20 states that have much stronger laws. Most of those laws are about breeding, but if I am just uncomfortable just doing blanket bans, and that's why the AG needs to be at the table because we need to know what the AG can or can't enforce.
Well, I think the bill then does help the dog. I think that's what I'm saying. I think at least your amendment about the study will maybe get us down to where we can do a little bit more with all parties involved. And I like the dog, so thank you very much for your information.
All right, thank you.
Delegate Chi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Vice Chair. So if I'm I'm trying to understand the problem we're trying to solve, which is we're trying to make sure, this bill is trying to make sure that the puppies will not be sourced from puppy mills.
Correct.
If anyone, whether you are a broker or a retail pet store, you cannot be selling as a source for any puppies.
Correct.
We don't know where you get your puppies, basically, right?
That's correct.
So basically, this bill will expand the definition of pet stores to include the brokers so that nobody can use those entities to source puppies. And if you want one, you have to go directly to the source. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Well, except that if you passed my First Amendment, it would allow people to go to a broker or a dealer.
Okay.
It's licensed by the Animal Welfare Act.
It can go there. So without your amendment, my question would have been, then why don't we have a bill that says you cannot, whether you're a broker or whatever, you cannot source from puppy mills, if that's the problem, right?
It is. And I would be fine with I don't want anyone buying from puppy mills.
Okay, so, all right. So part of your amendment is instead of banning, you are trying to tighten up the regulation by increasing transparency.
That's what I think we should do, yes.
Okay, I know
Senator, what I'm
Kramer
proposing is perfect, but that is what I want to do, correct?
Yeah, I know Senator Kramer is extremely passionate about animal welfare, and he's been working on this for years, and I think we really should try to do something to work with him on this. I just understand the logic behind this and where the source of the problem is and how we can strike a medium in that process. Thank you.
Delegate Branch. Delegate Branch, are you there?
Here I am. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I kind of agree with Delegate Chi. I know no one that knows this issue better than Senator Kramer. He's more than passionate about this issue, and he's been on this issue forever. And so if he's not liking the amendments, and we're going to send the bill over with amendments that he's already expressed that he doesn't like, he's only going to try to, knowing Senator Kramer, is to undo what was done to his bill. So as Delegate Chi said, I don't know why we don't work with him. I mean, he knows this issue better than anyone, and he's been on it for a number of years. So I'm inclined to stick with the bill as is, and I will more than likely be voting accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Adams.
Adams, you're muted.
I'm sorry, Council, how do we get around the Commerce Clause in this bill?
The AG's office, I guess, provided a letter to Senator Kramer, which I believe he shared with you all, that says that the language needs to come out in the bill that he's proposing to remove about the sale being in person as being excluded from a retail pet store. So I have a letter here dated March 26 from, I think it's David Stamper, saying that in his view, with the sponsor's planned amendment, which you all adopted, the bill is not clearly unconstitutional under the Commerce Clause.
You said it's not clearly?
Is not clearly, that's how they say it.
That's a double negative.
It's not clearly unconstitutional, that's how they will say it.
Well, that's their way of
Is that
saying
to be
it.
interpreted that it's partially unconstitutional or something?
They won't say that's the AG's way of saying
Hunting.
you
can't, it's not 100% that you can't do it.
All righty.
So, I mean, I don't have any other questions. This is a preemption. I know his heart's in a good place, but even if the bill passes, and now I'm talking on the bill, but even if the bill passes, what happens? People with means like me go to Delaware, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia. People that don't have means are put in a position. And that's the policy question that the committee has. is, are you going to force me to take a nice weekend to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and go buy a corgi somewhere around there, or and I'll do it, right? So I'll do it. How many people in Maryland want the companionship of a pet and can't or won't be able to do that? And it's not the won't people, it's the people that can't do that.
Mr. Chair, Delegate Valderrama has her hand up. It's just hard to see her little hand with her background.
Got it.
I have a colored
Delegate
hand.
Valderrama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'll be brief. I'm with respectfully to our Vice Chair. I know she did a lot of work on and not trying to kill the bill. I'm kind of on the opposite side. So many of you should have received a letter from Senator Kramer this afternoon detailing his conversation with our Vice Chair and going over the conversation they had about the amendments. And not surprising, does not feel these amendments would help. And just to throw out there, the First Amendment that deletes brokers from the bill and then inserts the language that requires, I believe the word is dealers, which apparently dealers includes brokers in its definition already. So that kind of is one reason why he's not in favor of that. And then the Second Amendment comes from the industry, right? Because they're trying to stop, they tried to shop a Senate sponsor across with our sister committee in finance, and it didn't happen. And so because it does have good intentions with creating the task force, no one wanted to offer the amendment. And it is the understanding, or at least his understanding, that it's just smoke and mirrors, just to delay and, differ meaningful change for it. But with that said, the First Amendment, it deals with breeders, but the intent of the bill is to stop, as he called during the testimony, the Amazon effect of the puppy and kitten sales by the mega brokers. And then in answer to Delegate Adams' question, there was information that was furthermore disseminated by the senator that would cover your issue with the Commerce Clause, as well as the legalities or illegalities of some of the vendors that were running illegally and were told that they were running illegally by the AG. So I just wanted to put it out there, and respectfully to the Vice Chair, I'm going to be voting.
Mr. Chair, can I respond to what Delegate Valderrama said?
Yes, ma'am.
Number one, if Delegate Kramer sent someone delineating our Senator, I will get it straight. If he sent something to everyone delineating our conversation, for what it's worth, I didn't get it, which doesn't make sense to me because he's really been good about keeping everybody above board. But I have not received an email to tell me to discuss our discussion yesterday. Second, as to the task force, the industry did in fact provide language. That's not the language that's in my task force. The industry had all of 2 senators, 2 House members, and 2 other people on. It did not list the number of people, sorry, that I have listed on the task force. I also changed and increased the scope of the task force. So it is not an industry amendment. And I just want to be sure that that is clear, that it is not the amendment that came. The senator that was going to introduce the task force on the other side was Senator J.B. Jennings. And he, I think, actually filed a bill and then withdrew it. I talked to Senator Jennings today. And to be honest, it was just sort of, Senator Kramer has a different perspective on why Senator Jennings didn't pursue it. But Senator Jennings was just, if you listen to the bill hearing on this, Senator Kramer's passion is very clear. And anyone that spoke against it made the conversation difficult, and it was just a matter of letting it go.
Mr.
Chairman.
Let me go back to Delegate Adams, then Delegate Pippy. Madam Vice Chair, I sent you something.
Okay.
All right, so council, let me ask a follow-up to my other question. Is the reason why this is not a clear violation of the Commerce Clause is because Senator Kramer's amendments try to super heavy regulate the industry as opposed to completely banning it? So you can, I think we know you can't ban interstate commerce, but what's he trying to do? Heavily regulate it in a way that almost makes it impractical for these operations to exist?
The language in the bill as introduced said that it basically an in-person physical exchange is not prohibited. It's not included in the definition of retail pet store. And so in that way, that would be preferencing in-state, people in Maryland. So the amendment that he has offered removes that exemption from the retail pet store definition.
Let me follow up to that follow-up. So what you're saying is that we're allowing a very narrow way for me as a buyer to meet a broker in a neutral location for the purpose of conducting commerce, and that's allowed under the bill. So is that how you view that?
Yeah, I just want to, if you would let me, I just wanted to read from the AG letter a little to give a little more context. So Mr. Stamper said, in this instance, the bill with the proposed amendment does not appear to discriminate either facially or in purpose or practical effect against interstate commerce. The bill's prohibition on the sale, transfer, or disposing of cats or dogs applies equally to in-state and out-of-state sellers and products. The question then is whether this bill's prohibition creates an undue burden on interstate commerce that is excessive relative to the local benefit.
So here's my follow-up to that. Basically, what we're doing is we're saying, go meet me in a Walmart parking lot with another broker. And I view that as being a relatively unsafe way to conduct business, probably with cash, because we're not talking about a brick and mortar or a online retail establishment that you can make a payment and have a record. And then under the guise of a transaction that we as a state are allowing to have it happen like this, we're making it technically legal. But the offer of this amendment is not in good faith, because how many people are going to go into a parking lot and meet to buy a puppy? And that almost seems I got to finish my thought, but I've got to think of the right way to put it. This is a ban, but the amendment is not being offered in good faith. We're trying to get around and that's not. I'm not taking a knock on Senator Kramer. I'm just saying that the fact is the senator wants the ban, and this is how he's figured out how to get around the Commerce Clause, and that has less to do about helping consumers work toward having a better relationship with a seller, and more to do with, I'm going to make it so painful and difficult for a consumer to do business, they just will simply choose not to do business 99 times out of 100. So I'm back to, this is a ban, and I'm not sure how a judge would come down on it, but clearly a judge would have to at some point hear this case and say, and here's my closing comment on that. Here's hoping that no senator or delegate now or in the future ever views my industry through the same or similar lens. And I hope that most businesses who are impacted by this bill, should it pass, look at it like, well, it's not me today, but it could be me tomorrow. And this sets a terrible precedent if you're a business owner, because we're flaunting federal Commerce Clause language that's there for a reason.
Let me go to Delegate Queen. I missed her, and I'll come back to you, Delegate Pippin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is around the enforcement piece. I heard Delegate Dumais, when I think we talked last week, I thought that was part of the area where you had the biggest concern. And one of the things that was a concern raised about the law that went in effect earlier this year is I can't determine whether we pass the bill as it is or with the amendments. Aren't we still going to have an enforcement issue, or how have we addressed that at all?
No. I mean, I think that's one of the problems, whether we pass the bill with or without amendments, enforcement is still an issue. I mean, in my conversation with Senator Kramer yesterday, he indicated that one of the reasons that he went forward with the bill in 2018, basically banning retail pet stores from being able to sell dogs other than the shelter or rescue dogs, is that there isn't enough enforcement. The AG didn't have the capacity to do the enforcement. clearly from the federal level, I mean, the federal regulations and statute is very, it's a, there's a, what they call a blue book that gives you the entire statute as well as all the regulations. It's 265 pages, which I've read most of and certainly skimmed all of. The problem is the federal government's not enforcing it. I actually do think it is the state's responsibility. We're not going to get the federal government to do this type of enforcement. Now, do we have a statute that is able to be enforced at this point in time? I mean, I think that's a question that I have and I don't have a definitive answer to. And if we're going to have the AG do the enforcement, you know what? Part of a subsequent bill, not this one, will have to include funding for the AG to be able to do it. And it's the reason why I listed them as a task force member.
Okay, so the amendment you're trying to do for the task force is to try to get to enforcement that we're going to need at some point, regardless of how we pass the bill, is what you believe.
That's correct. And I think we needed to, to be clear and decide, are we going to enforce it or are we just going to have the ban? But even the ban, that's what the AG is suing this, one of the young women that testified before us. I don't remember which store, but there's a Rockville store that has citations, and there's one I think in Anne Arundel County that's received quite a few citations where they are saying that they're sort of just showcasing, so they're not really selling. I don't know what that distinction is, and I figure that's going to play out somewhere in court.
So the task force piece, the senator doesn't like that either?
He does not. Again, I think the task force is the strongest part of my amendments, in that I think we really do need to take a look at all of this and have everybody seated at the table and figure out what we want to do as a state. And it may well be that we continue the ban that is going to be in effect is in effect now, would continue to be in effect when we pass the bill. But I did not strike the bill into a task force, but I do think that it is a worthy cause.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Brooks.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Hey, Council, this bill wouldn't preclude, say, customers from buying from breeders, would it?
No, you can buy directly.
Yeah, okay. And also, this bill passed in the Senate. What was the count?
I believe it was unanimous.
I think it was too.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Pippy.
So the bill was not unanimous. It was 40 something to 2. Not a big deal.
Thank you.
Senate. I didn't also get a letter from Senator Kramer. So if there is a letter floating around, I know I'm new to the committee, but if someone could forward that to me, that would be helpful. And the other thing, after reading through all the material that I have, I was looking for the definition of what a puppy mill is. So could someone, maybe council, tell me what a puppy mill is? I mean, I know what you think it is, but what's the definition of it?
I don't believe it's defined in law anywhere. It's I think understood to mean a facility that has acquired a number of violations from the USDA for not running a facility that meets the federal standards. So in prior years, the bills there was discussion about, if you have X number of citations under the Federal Animal Welfare Act, then you couldn't be a source for an approved source in the state. But I've never seen a definition of that. I think it's just kind of, the understanding is it's a place that's been cited a number of times.
Now, okay. And the reason I say that, back to my personal story, is that, we required to see, vet records for the puppy. Now, whether they forged those or whatever, but we got vet records, and then we were able to see the parents. But, they could have produced hundreds of puppies from that couple. I don't know. I didn't verify. I mean, I didn't know if that was considered a puppy mill. I mean, we at least got some documentation, and some DNA to make sure that the dog didn't have all sorts of other animals in it, as terrible as that sounds. But I just, if you're banning a puppy mill, I mean, I would love to see a definition. I mean, there's no definition of it. I mean, it's like, what, or, you're banning something that's not defined, right? It just seems, and then I'm I'm still on level 1. I know that Delegate Adams is on level 10 with the constitutionality of it all, but I'm still at first base here trying to figure out. Now, I'm all for against violations. I mean, I like parents. I like dogs more than I like most people, and I would definitely be in support of prohibiting violations. But I don't see that in this bill. I mean, unless I'm missing something. I mean, I see you want to prohibit pet stores from selling dogs that may not be in violation of anything, right? I mean, a pet store could acquire puppies from a place that's never violated anything. And you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Not anymore. Now they can only do it from an animal welfare or animal rescue or shelter. By the way, those aren't regulated either.
Yeah, so I mean, not to complicate things, and maybe, this is above my pay grade here. I'm just trying to figure out, what we're actually doing. I would be all for prohibiting or making things felonies for, animal abuse and things of that nature and violations and unsafe breeding practices and things like that. But I'm just not seeing any of that here. So that helps. Thank you.
Delegate Jackson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think for me, I am hung up on the fact that there's no enforcement on this bill. For the life of me, I can't understand why we would pass a bill that has no enforcement. I mean, what encouragement does the industry have to abide by any law that we pass concerning this issue? And, I guess I just can't get past that. And so that was just my 2 cents.
Would be a go ahead, Laura, you got it.
Yeah, the retail pet store law is enforced by the Consumer Protection Division of the Office of the Attorney General. It has been for years. A violation of the law is a civil penalty, subject to the civil penalties under the Maryland Consumer Protection Act, but not the criminal penalties. But there is a framework in place. I think what the vice chair was saying is that in her conversations with the sponsor, it's kind of come to light that the AG's office may not have adequate resources to more proactively enforce the law. But there is an enforcement agency and mechanism in place already that's unchanged by this bill.
Okay, so there's a framework in place, but it's not enforceable because of lack of funding?
Well, it sounds like the AG is doing at least some minimal enforcement because they've filed suit against the retail pet stores that are operating, saying that they're not open to the public. They're doing by appointment. The law says that a retail pet store is open to the public, and so this bill takes that out. But I don't know specifically how much enforcement the agency is doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So after hearing my colleagues' questions and comments, I want to go back to the point I kind of raised earlier. Would the new amendments proposed by Delegate Dumais, by Vice Chair Dumais, bring the bill closer without outright ban, closer to essentially eliminating the operation of sourcing from puppy mills? Is that right? Or would
I have to say that
it's more difficult to source from puppy mills?
So with the vice chair's amendment, as she said, she was treading lightly with the definition of retail pet store. So the only change with her amendment would be to say that a retail pet store does not include an establishment at which the animals sold at the establishment were born there. So it would not be adding broker to the definition. I think broker is sort of kind of like the essence. That's the hammer that's in this bill, as I understand it. So
right. So her amendment takes the broker out of the ban.
That is correct. Right.
But you add some bullet points to require more transparency of on them, to say you have to tell me where you get these puppies from, and
yes,
that their health conditions, their age, and whatever, all kinds of information. So
Right.
aggregate, that kind of transparency, would that essentially eliminate the subpar, substandard puppy mills, you think? Because I don't know.
I can't say that, I cannot sit here and tell you that that would absolutely eliminate that. I think it goes a long way towards it, but not even a long way. I think it takes it a step farther. I can't even say it goes a long way. I mean, that's part of the problem. This is an industry that I don't think we, as a committee, have a real handle on, which is the purpose of the Second Amendment, which is the task force. I mean, if people are uncomfortable with the dealer piece, you know, again, I'm arguing against myself, but I'm okay withdrawing Amendment 1 so that we don't have to define dealers, and the bill would then remain with broker listed as a, you know, retail pet store. But I will push the amendment for the task force because I am really concerned, as Delegate Adams has indicated, what we're doing to an industry that we don't know enough about. Every single broker does not buy from pet puppy mills, and there's no evidence of that. Are there puppy mills that are horrible places? Absolutely. Do I want people buying from puppy mills? No. But I'm just not convinced that as a state, we should say all brokers are bad, so we're not going to buy from any broker or dealer or anybody else. That you have to go directly to, I mean, the way the law would be, if we pass it as it is, and the way it is now, you can buy from a breeder directly. But that's the only place you can buy unless you want to go to a pet store or a shelter or an animal rescue. Whereas, you're right, Senator Kramer calls it Amazon, but that there are brokers, dealers that are online that will help you buy the pet that you want. Senator Kramer believes that all of them buy from puppy mills. I don't know that for a fact, and I didn't hear evidence of that. But if the committee is more comfortable sort of not delving into the dealer broker piece, I'm willing to withdraw Amendment 1, but I would push Amendment 2 because I think we need to have a handle on it.
I'm sold. Anybody else?
Ready for a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, let's start with amendment number 2 from the vice chair of the task force. The task force.
I'm going to move unfavorable.
On the amendment?
On the amendment.
For what it's worth, I would move favorable on the amendment about the task force.
I would second a
The
favorable
first,
motion on that.
my first amendment about dealers, I will withdraw. So we don't have to argue it.
Second on the unfavorable.
All right, if we can do that, I think that helps us to get off the issue to be able to move it forward, to go with the task force amendment as opposed to Amendment 1. Let's see what that looks like. All in favors, this is amendment number 2, signify by aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. I think I heard that right. Motion carries. If you're not offering amendment number 1, we don't need to vote on that.
Correct. I'm not offering Amendment 1.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I thought there was a motion for unfavorable on Amendment 2 in a second.
No.
I didn't hear that.
I seconded the favorable motion, Mr. Chair. This is Delegate Howard. I seconded the vice chair's favorable motion on Amendment 2.
I had seconded Delegate Branch's unfavorable, but it is.
Yeah, I did too.
Let me say it one more time. I didn't hear that. I heard the one that we passed. All right, we good?
Gotcha.
I can do a roll call on that if we need to check to see if I was wrong.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Wait a minute, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't want to, throw. But y'all got me a little confused. Okay, now we are voting right now on amendment number 2 of the task force, correct?
No, ma'am. We've already
ma'am.
voted that.
So I would
voted
then move the bill as amended.
we're on the bill as amended.
Second.
The amendment for the task force, we just voted that one on it, and the vice chair didn't offer the first one, so we didn't vote on the first one because it's not being offered.
Okay. Okay.
We good?
I'm gonna be okay.
Just stick with your chair, delegate, and you'll be great.
It'll be all right.
You can never go wrong doing that. I promise you. All right, on the bill as amended. Is there a motion?
I moved favorable as amended.
Second.
Moved and seconded for favorable as amended. Madam Vice Chair,
Yes.
Delegate Brooks. Ben, you're muted.
Yes.
Gotcha. Delegate Fisher's excused. Delegate Queen.
Yes.
Delegate Turner.
We voting on the bill, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
As amendment. Okay, I'm
Yes.
the bill, so I'm voting for the bill. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. Aye.
Delegate Rogers.
Aye.
Delegate Carey.
Yes.
Delegate Jackson.
Excuse.
Delegate Pippy.
Yes.
Delegate Mount.
No.
Delegate Wilson. Is Delegate Wilson with us? All right, excuse. Delegate Impalaria.
No.
Delegate Brand.
Yes, wait a minute. Yes.
Delegate Valderrama.
Aye.
Delegate Walker.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Gotcha. Delegate Chi.
Yes.
Delegate Adams.
No.
Delegate Arendt.
Yes.
Delegate Fennell.
Yes.
Delegate Charkoudian.
Yes.
Delegate Howard.
Yes.
Delegate Crosby.
Yes.
And Delegate Watson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Good job, everyone. We will pick up the rest of the stuff tomorrow. I got to get back with the attorneys and go over a couple of additional items. Know that we still have some big ones hanging out there. I promise we will get to them. I promise. But we're just going to manage everything, make sure that we can get it through and work through all the issues so we don't have to do any unnecessary conferences and so forth. But we will get through it. Thank you very much and see you guys on the floor in 30 minutes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Delegate Charkoudian, have a question.
Delegate Charkoudian.
Thank you. I saw that Climate Solutions now isn't on our voting list. We had talked about it at the last one we went over the amendments. Do you know when we'd be voting on that?
I don't, but if anybody happens to see Senator Pisk, tell him I will do it when I'm ready. That it won't be when he thinks I should do it. It'll be when I'm ready to do it, when I think we're ready to do it. It's a 90-day session. It's not an 83 or 85 or whatever. So I don't feel any rush to get out and do it until I think we understand it. And talking stuff in the paper isn't gonna move me. So it is what it is. I promise the speaker that I will have a vote on it, and I will, but it won't be before I think we're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All righty. Any concurrences? Do we have any concurrences?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do.
Let's knock them out.
Okay, Laura, you have got 107?
Yes. Senate Bill 107 is the secure wage bill that is Senator Hayes. The Senate has asked the House to recede. This is the main discrepancy is over the exemption for airlines. So if you wanted to be consistent with how you passed House Bill 685 by exempting airlines, you would move not to recede and appoint conferees.
I'm sorry, can I get that one more time, Laura?
This is the secure wage bill. The discrepancy between the House and the Senate bill is
Oh,
over
okay.
the airline exemptions.
Airlines.
So
I got you.
the Senate's asking the House to recede.
You remember what I said about unnecessary conferences? I changed my mind. And here's the reason why. Again, as I said before, what the union negotiated with Dulles and Reagan National was what we sent the bill over as. I'm not sure why we would take. I'd at least like to hear the explanation that that was an agreement they accepted. And as a matter of fact, when they were asking us to vote for the bill, they held that agreement up as why we should do the bill. But that one little part about exempting the airlines, that's what they agreed to with Dulles and Reagan National. BWI Thurgood Marshall has to compete with them. So I think we at least need to have that conversation as to why the Senate feels we shouldn't be on equal footing. I won't say this analogy anymore, but again, if we were to offer, if the state were to offer non-union employees a 5% raise, but union employees a 3.5% raise, they would be asking for parity. So I guess what I'm saying in this instance is we're asking for parity. But if I'm wrong, I need to explain that, why I'm wrong, and I will happily stand down, but no one has seemed to be able to answer that question. But if you all feel differently, please show me the error of my ways on this.
No, I agree, the chair, about the airlines, but.
Yeah, I agreed with you as the House sponsor. Obviously, I was trying to include everyone and the airlines, but I will defer to my chair. So are you going to be setting up a conference committee then, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am. I see Delegate Turner trying to get in yourself. And
if so, I'd like to be on that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Delegate Turner, you're muted.
I saw you talk. I just couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. I thought I was talking. I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
All righty. Then let's do that. Let me see. Is there a motion not to concur?
Not to recede.
Not to concur. Not to recede.
Not to recede. I apologize. Not. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right. Madam Vice Chair, would you, Delegate Valderrama, and who else want to go? Anybody else want to go with him?
Pam.
Yeah, Pam would be good.
Was that Pam that said it, or did somebody volunteer?
Where is she? Pam?
Okay. If Pam doesn't want it, Lily.
Yeah.
If Pam doesn't want it, me,
and the Lily
chair, and
Lily.
Okay. Hold on, Delegate Valderrama. Let me make sure these people you volunteering actually want to do it.
Where'd Lily go? She was on.
Is that a reward or punishment? Okay, I'll take it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you,
Right,
Lily.
so Madam Vice
Women
Chair,
power. Here we go.
I need you to be the chair of it, and Delegate Valderrama and Delegate Chi will go with you.
Okay.
All my Republicans remain quiet on that one. But, any more concurrences?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 205, talking about necessary conferees. This is the corresponding to House Bill 12, Delegate Courtney Watson's bill on delivery and takeout of alcoholic beverages from restaurants and bars. The Senate unwisely chose to add on their local council's ability to do legislation on this. So if you want to be consistent with what you did with House 12, you'll appoint yourself as the chair of the conference committee, along with Delegates Talmadge Branch and Courtney Watson.
I would like to do that if the committee's so inclined.
So
move not to recede and to appoint conferees. Yeah.
Yes. Move not to recede and appoint conferees.
I have one more, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
this
ma'am.
is the Senate Bill 762, the Senate Electricians Bill sponsored by Senator McCray. The Senate is asking the House to recede on the amendments that take out that exemption from the worksite requirement for solar installations and establish a work group.
Say that they want to establish a work group, or
No, the House said the work site requirement doesn't have an exemption, and there's a work group to study low voltage. The Senate is asking you to recede from that. So there would be an exemption for solar installations on the job site requirement, and there would be no work group.
Mr. Chair, can I chime in here?
Yes, sir.
I had talked to Senator McCray regarding another amendment I thought the Senate had put on there to make it the intent of the General Assembly that a journeyman did need to be on site for low voltage as well. Did that make it on there? Or is that something we even discuss here?
Delegate Crosby, I guess if that were added at this point in the process, the Senate would have to try to add it on the House bill. This is
Let's just, you know what? The easy part is if we go to conference, we do all of that, right, Laura?
Yes.
Then let's just do that and figure it out there. We'll figure it out in conference.
Okay, so you would be moving not to recede.
And appoint conferees?
Yes.
Well, it sounds like Delegate Crosby talked himself onto a conference.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Mr. Chair, I'll go with him.
Delegate Rogers. Republicans are still quiet.
Chairman, I don't like the bill, but Adams is raising his hand. I don't like the bill. You probably put me on there. I might kill the whole thing.
Well, I appreciate that, Delegate Mouse and Mounts, and you won't be on it, because otherwise we'll have to hear it again. What about you, Delegate Adams? Do you like the bill generally?
Well, I don't think I voted for it in committee. So if you're looking for an advocate, I was not your guy on that. Although it was a tough vote. I would not want to see the.
Well, they only need one. No, it's fine. If you have open out, you go. I'll just let Delegate Crosby chair it, and you and Delegate Rogers can go and you guys figure it out.
Sure.
Just make sure we don't have to vote again next year.
Oh my gosh.
That's the only thing.
Word.
This is the year we get this passed. All right. Any more? How are we looking generally? I mean, do we got a lot of stuff out there potentially that we need to concur or go through that, or are we just about done?
I wouldn't say we're just about done, but I would say we've been keeping pace.
We
That's
have,
just from my perspective.
we have very little in our box right now. It's more a matter of a couple of things that are over in the Senate that haven't moved. For example, 221.
That sounds familiar. What is 221?
That's the extraordinary circumstances for auto.
Yeah, that's probably not going to move from what.
Okay. So that's one where there wasn't a cross file to deal with, and there's not much else out there.
I think the big thing out there for you is the essential worker bill.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Yep.
Geez. I can't think of anything else. Like I said, we're going to get to all this stuff. I promise I've given my word to folks and so forth. I just didn't tell them when, but I said I would do it, and that's what I will do. Every single one of those bills that I know that's out there, I will bring them up for a vote in a timely fashion and all of that stuff. You have my commitment on that. I know it's important. A number of these bills are important to you guys as well as others. So we will definitely get to it. Yeah, I think we're good. I may call the public utility. First of all, are there any meetings? We don't have any more bill hearings this week. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do we have any scheduled public hearings?
No.
I mean, not public hearing. Subcommittee meetings or anything?
We will be we'll need to have a bill hearing. There's a Senate UI bill that if it gets out of rules, Senate Bill 811, it's Senator Hershey's bill about the UI trust fund. and the tax tables, that will be receiving a hearing, I assume.
We didn't already do something similar to that or something?
No, the Delegate Carey knows more than I do, actually, about what's going on with it.
No, we haven't done anything similar to that, Mr. Chair.
All right. Then as soon as it gets out, matter of fact, I think there's a rule committee meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, there is tomorrow morning, right?
That may be it then. All right, then as soon as we get that, we will take that up, and we'll have the hearing and immediately go to subcommittee for you all to do that, so we can get that done. Public utilities, Bob, I'd like to get that tomorrow. Now that unless we're caught up just a few minutes on one or two issues, and
okay,
that's it.
Okay, we have no more voting, Mr. Chair.
I did not say that. That I can't. Matter of fact, I can promise you that we will be voting probably every day the rest of the week. Something's going to pop up. It may not be long, but something's going to pop up, and we need to keep it moving so that everything doesn't grind to a halt on Saturday or Monday. So we'll keep pushing as we go. But that's it. We won't have any more bill hearings. We will, please guys, check your emails or have staff check them for when we do it. The likelihood, if it isn't too long or if subcommittees don't get in the way, I'll see if we can do it either right after we get off the floor, or if the floor sessions are long, we'll take an hour for lunch and then we'll immediately get to it. So I won't drag it out any longer than necessary. And my guess is starting around Wednesday, definitely no later than Thursday, we'll be in double sessions the rest of the week. And for those who are wondering, tell you at 99.9% certainty, we will be here Saturday.
What?
Time.
Oh yeah.
No, that's a given. That
oh
is
yeah.
A given. I don't believe we'll be there Sunday, but Saturday is a given.
Okay.
So
hey, the grapevine has it that even the mighty Senate is going to be in on Saturday.
They never do that.
Remember
they never do that, but that's what they've been told so far. So we'll
Good.
see.
Maybe it'll scare them.
And misery loves company, so they could join us on one of those long Saturdays. So yeah, so that's where we are. If you have any questions about the conference committees, how to do them or whatever, please check in with Robert or Tiffany or Laura. They will be more than happy to guide you on what needs to be done to get this moving along. But yeah, go ahead, take these next 20 minutes to do whatever you have to do. They told me we potentially could be on the floor a while, so grab a quick bite or whatever they need to do, okay?
Okay.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. See you all in a while.